All right, hello and welcome to our summit, Balanced Body, Peaceful Mind. I'm very excited to bring to you two amazing people. And I just wanted to tell you a little bit about them. And if they want to add something more, they're more than welcome to add to that. So Kendra Cannoy, so she started a movement, Move Freely, Live Fully. So she helps active people break free from joint pain without pills, surgery, or endless PT visits. Using her accelerated regeneration method, she helped runners, dancers, and travelers cancel their surgeries and return to the activities they love. A former pro dancer with deep expertise and corrective movement, Kendra empowers you to heal naturally and reclaim vibrant mobility at any age. And anything else you want to add to that, Kendra?
Oh, I like the sound of that.
Very nice.
Well, this is you. And probably more to you than just short description as that. So we're just very excited to hear more about you.
Thank you.
And Kenny Rego is here. So his movement is to disrupt the patterns, reclaim your power. Kenny helps people break free from cycles of pain, scarcity, and misaligned relationships. With over 30 years of experience in his powerful Bio Frequency Neutralization Method, he rewires your subconscious mind to align with success, health, and abundance, using nature's laws to shift your reality from inside out. Anything I missed, Kenny?
No, very good.
Also
A good
impressive.
summary.
Perfect. So I have a couple questions to you guys. So for Kendra, so you help people avoid surgery and heal joint pain naturally. Is that just what inspired you to develop the accelerated regeneration method? Could you tell us?
Yes, absolutely. And I help people ideally avoid surgery, although sometimes surgeries are necessary. But in the healing toolbox, can be used to help prevent surgery. And then in the case where there's, sometimes limited options and people have to have surgery, then those same tools can be done to help accelerate their body's regeneration, which is hence the method is called accelerated regeneration. And my journey started long time ago, 17 years ago. I had a hip flexor injury that wouldn't heal for 2 years. And I was working as a personal trainer at the time, and as well as dancing professionally. And especially at my age, at 30 at the time, I thought, I'm doing everything I'm supposed to. I'm doing all these PT exercises. I was eating healthy in terms of what I knew at that time, although that has shifted since then. So even though, and Kenny and I work together now in the accelerated regeneration process, helping people with joint pain. Um, and like I said, the tools can really apply to many, many, if not all symptoms of the body and the mind. But when we were deciding, like, okay, who do we really want to serve? I had my hip flexor experience from back then. Kenny's had, back pain off and on, and a lot of experience with that. And we're very active people. We disc golf together. We are just dabbling in pickleball a little bit, hiking, camping, so we're out and about paddle boarding. And when you're active, you're moving the body, and sometimes the body gets sore, and sometimes the joints, have issues. So just really our personal experience of life and our friends, our friends are like, oh, hobbling around on a knee or something. So it just was something that we felt we wanted to, and then specifically target active people, because like I just said, they'll typically can run into some issues more often than people who are sitting on the couch run into different issues. But when you're working with active people, there's also typically there's a good motivation, like Kenny's disc golfed his whole life. I'm pretty new to it, but any sport people get really passionate about. And if you have a joint injury that's taking you out of being able to do the passion that you want to do, and then you're kind of just left with work and chores at home, and it's like you've
Mhm.
taken away that, sometimes like the one thing that people get really excited to go experience, it's motivating for them to make the changes, and
Mhm.
we are a lifestyle, I don't want to say change because it's like a dirty word, but there are things that people have to take a look at with their lifestyle, which is challenging, and
Mhm.
we all want the magic pill, but you know, unfortunately for um, our lazy, nature as humans, there is a magic pill. It comes with a whole day full of habits and a
Mhm.
mindset, and so
Mhm.
it's really an all-encompassing, holistic process. But that's why how it came to be.
Oh, that's totally true. Absolutely true. Being a nurse and being in a surgical setting, I totally can relate to that. So I can tell you that it takes a toll on people when they cannot do things that they love. So and it's just amazing what you do for people and to bring them back to the activities, to the lifestyle. So it means a lot to people.
Yeah.
Okay. So what are some biggest myths you think that the joint pain and aging that you wish more people knew the truth about?
Aging for sure is, well, you could say it for anything, but is a belief system. We're advertised on TV, especially this day and age, right? Almost all the ads on TV are for medications for, you know, things that, oh, your life is terrible because of this symptom, and, whatever.
Mhm.
So there's this concept that, like, oh, okay, as we progress through the decades, we're going to start to break down, and joint pain, being a very common one too. And so a big myth is that the body is going to break down and can only last the 75 to 100 years that some people do. Um, in reality, if given the right environment and if given the right circumstances and mindset, uh, the body can move and groove and function well even beyond that. Um, and so we come up against things that have just become part of our culture, the fast food culture and the convenience, and getting food delivered by any of the services. And then medications become a convenience thing because it's like, oh, you could, to deal with your acid reflux, you could change the way you eat, or you could just take this pill,
Mhm.
right? And so it's like, let's just do that, So that's, we get, the older you get, the more of a buildup of toxins and inflammation you get. And so that's really what we're helping people discover and realize and take ownership of, is to make these shifts so that we can reverse what's been done, the toxins that we've been exposed to. Some people just feel like, oh, I grew up, next to a power plant, or some people think like, oh, I'm screwed, and that's it. And it's like, no, I mean, yes, you might have to be, a little bit more vigilant and diligent in your process, but actually, the regeneration part of our title, accelerated regeneration, is that our body and our cells are constantly regenerating. So we can create a whole new body, no matter what you've been through. And there is a piece of uh we think a lot around here. We're in Northern California, and there's a lot of endurance sports, but specifically running, where people are
Mhm.
running more than a marathon, ultra runners. There's a 100-mile race that ends here every year. That's a big deal. And, while we're active and we say people should do things, there is a trade-off if you're going to be that intense on your joints,
Mhm.
But there's a video I made a while back last year that's called, Play Hard, Heal Hard. And the ironic thing about these runners is that there's a couple bars downtown that have, deals and nights where the runners come in from running however many, 20, 30, 40, 50 miles and then have beer together. And it's like, talk about the most inflammatory drink that you could have after just pounding on your joints.
Wow.
So if you want to do that stuff, it's not impossible. You can still, but you really have to then even be more accountable to, and that goes for professional athletes or just really enthusiastic weekend warriors. If you're going to compete every weekend, then yeah, you can't just, yeah,
Go have beers with the crew. You're gonna pay the price.
yes.
What a torture for your body, right?
Yeah, and I mean, and it's really, it seems to me, it's a drug because that adrenaline pump, the endorphins, everything that's going on it's a drug in the body that's formulating this feeling of accomplishment, a feeling of being able to get out there and run 100 miles, and you become so numb, and your main goal is to finish. But then that finish, after you've crossed that line, what is really happening to the body afterwards? It's in you know crisis mode.
Hmm.
And so the last thing you need to do is be having beers with the crew down at the inflaming. And I've seen these runners, they come in and they're eating bowls of pasta, and they're filling up on carbs because they haven't eaten in God knows how long,
Yes, yeah.
but they're filling their body with stuff that's just going to inflame it and make their
Mhm.
recovery more, just harder on the body.
For sure, for sure. Wow, that's crazy.
And I'd say one other myth that I want to speak to, especially pertaining to joint pain, is because I have we run a Facebook group that is for active people with joint pain. And people tell me what's going on when they come into the group. So, we see or we hear about the bone on bone knees and the torn meniscus and the torn ACL and the arthritis and the rheumatoid arthritis. And I'm constantly saying in there, because they're like, well, can it help with this? Can it help with this? Whatever their MRI or their doctors has, shown them. And it's like the structure, the actual injury doesn't matter so much. Now, obviously, a torn ACL is going to be, again, you have to, play hard, heal hard. You have to heal
Hmm.
a little bit harder, so to speak, if you have a bigger injury, but it's still the same process. It's still the same, and you can actually still function. There's plenty of people that are out there functioning, doing the sports and the lifestyle that they want to be doing with these same tears. It doesn't, some tears can fix, but then some actually won't, but it doesn't matter. The problem is pain. I asked them, like, well, if you still had a torn meniscus, but you didn't have any knee pain, would that be okay with you? And they're like, yeah, I don't really care if the structure actually comes fully back together. And that's one thing with the surgery conversation is it seems logical that we should want to, put our body back together again exactly the way we were born, but the body will put itself back together again. It just wouldn't be exactly like the surgeon would. And then, of course, then when you have surgery, you're opening yourself up to other risks and, some other issues, which is why so many people want to avoid that
Hmm.
experience.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, what story could you share with us?
We had to talk. I was like, which one do you want to share? Because we're
So
we're
many.
blessed to have a lot to share. Um, and I'll just like give you real snippets that we just had a great rheumatoid arthritis, a woman who has rheumatoid arthritis and has had it for 20 years, get all the way out of pain. We had a woman, a dental hygienist with a bulging disc, which they get a lot of, neck injuries, who went from a 10 out of 10 pain down to a 0.
Wow.
But I think the one we want to highlight today is a woman who years before we met her, took a terrible fall on a hike down a cliff and broke 36 bones in her body. So she'd been on her healing journey for a long time before we even met her. But when we met her, she was all put back together again, speaking of surgeries, and she had some plates and some fusions and, obviously a very, very intense experience and things going on in her body. But where she was taking Percocet every day to function, um, battling depression because she just still wasn't feeling, she was living at that, like, barely sustaining, barely making it to her work,
Plus riddled in pain,
yeah, and still had the
nonstop
pain.
Just a Band-Aid. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, even the Band-Aid wasn't stopping the bleeding. It
Mhm.
was still, you can only take so many Percocet, Vicodin, whatever. The pain's still it numbs it for a second, but then you got to double up, because
Mhm.
sooner or later your body gets used to that, and
Yeah.
and then pretty soon your kidneys and your liver are not used to that, and then the next thing you know, you're dealing with the next ailment, the next ailment, the
Right.
next ailment, because of the medications, because of the painkillers,
Mhm.
So she came to us, and she was in pain and she was very disoriented, but she came in and did the program 100% to the T, and she went through and got herself out of pain, and now she's out there living her best life.
Yeah, no more Percocet or any medications as far as I know. And then I think, there's always the, like, emergency ambulance situation, right? Like, we wanted to get her off the pain pills and out of pain.
Mhm.
And but then from there it comes into, and this, is a good segue into your questions for Kenny, is okay, now that we're out of pain and we can stop being dominated by that thought and that experience, what else do we want? And she already has a great intuitive, spiritual ability and awareness. And so when she started feeling better, she got to really lean into that part of her life. And, she kayaks all the time now, and we're always seeing photos of her out on the water. And it's like, and then relationships, she started
Mhm.
dating someone right at kind of the end of our process with her.
Mhm.
And that's where the good stuff is, like,
Mhm.
the pain is like, oh, that's holding you back from all of this beautiful things that you can have in life. And so, yeah, we're very proud of her.
Especially
Oh.
spending time in a kayak. I mean, you're sitting down, you're moving
Mhm.
that back and your neck, and even with me not in pain, when I go kayaking, I'm like, oh, this is really
Yeah.
uncomfortable,
Mhm.
but yet she's flowing right through it, and that's her passion, and she's out there almost every day, just doing it.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
amazing. That changes life completely. So
Yeah.
from that, like a loop, the constant loop of suffering and pain. So yeah. So that's another question to Kenny. That's what we flowing smoothly to the questions for Kenny. So you teach that suffering can become a habit. How do people recognize when they stuck in that loop, and how do they begin to shift it?
Well, the mind, the subjective mind comes into the biggest play with our body, with our creation of who we are, how we act, what we do. The suffering, I mean, if you're in pain and your mind is focused on the suffering all the time, right?
Mhm.
And you go to move and you're in pain, and your mind is like, oh, that movement just now that you did caused you pain. And it does it again in a second time, and then it does it again in a third time. Well, the mind has now created a subjective pattern for the subconscious mind to attach to. So now every time you take that movement, you're like, oh, the pain. Is the pain really there? Or is the mind creating the pain? The mind creates the pain. The body does not create any pain. There is no there is no memory in the body that
Mhm.
creates pain. The mind creates all electromagnetic frequency that sends it to the body and the nerves to create the pain. So the more or once you're in pain and you're focused on the pain, you create the pattern of pain for yourself. And then you start talking about your pain to every single time. You start identifying with your pain. That's the biggest suffering, is people start identifying with their condition
Mhm.
instead of their perfection.
Mhm.
And so when you meet somebody, hey, how are you doing? Oh, my back hurts. Oh, I'm in pain, or, whatever ailment or condition that they're experiencing, that's usually the first thing out of their mouth. How you doing today? Oh, my ankles are swollen. They want to identify with their condition. And so people will lock themselves in that pattern by identifying with their pain, with their condition, and not only that, but when they tell somebody that they are identifying that they're identifying with their pain, they are now putting that into somebody's mind to solidify it in what we
Mhm.
call collective consciousness. So now that pain is now magnified through that other person because that other person's thinking, oh, Betty's in pain. Betty's in pain. And then she tells somebody, and then they tell somebody. Now that's being put into the ethers of your condition.
Mhm.
So what we want to do is we want to focus on our perfection. We want to grab in the mind what it was like without the pain. And we don't want to sit there and focus on the condition and tell people about our pain. If somebody asks me how I'm doing, I'm excellent. I am perfect. Everything is great. Even if I'm riddled with pain, I don't want my subjective mind or my vocal cords that produce a frequency to project out into the ethers that I am this.
Mhm.
So by, you know, getting into that pattern, people have to watch what they say, who they say it to, and how they say it, right? And what they're thinking about their pain.
Mhm.
And
That's
that's what creates the patterns.
wow, that's awesome. So you actually answered my next question that I was going to ask you. How can we break the cycles of emotional and physical pain? And that's exactly what you just said. So,
There's more.
okay,
Yeah,
I'm
there's
excited to hear
definitely more to it.
that.
Well, so, when people are polar, right,
Mhm.
about something, about their pain. Some people are the opposite about their pain. They don't want to acknowledge their pain at all. So what they do is they go about and they're still drinking beer and they're still eating the inflammatory foods and they're still in those toxic relationships. They're still talking about how they're broke. They're polar about it. And then they switch to the other side and then they're polar about, oh, I'm doing great. Everything's awesome. I met this perfect, their pendulum is swinging back and forth. We live
Mhm.
in a world of duality. When
Mhm.
you create one thing, you have to experience the opposite. No
Mhm.
matter how far that pendulum swings back and forth, we're going to experience the opposite. It's the law. Okay. So that's another way people get locked in that pattern is they're very up and they're very, you know, down. But coming back into the next question of biofrequency neutralization and what is that? It's the practice of being neutral because when we're neutral, there's a frequency that we're emitting. Okay. And the
Mhm.
frequency that we're admitting is neutral. The pendulum swings smaller. So, yeah, we can still create, but that pendulum we're not creating up here and we're not creating down here for the opposite adverse reaction. It's like the yin and the yang. It's the duality. So, what we want to do with our clients is we get them into that pendulum swinging smaller and smaller to where your highs and your lows are very common together so
Mhm.
that you're not experiencing hyper emotion because then hyper emotion causes what? Anxiety, adrenaline.
Mhm. Mhm.
Adrenaline causes lactic acid. Lactic acid is what seizes up the joints and the muscles
Mhm.
and makes us,
Mhm.
like when I was a young man, if I was at a bar and I was hanging out and somebody said something to me and I was like, oh, I'm going to fight him or whatever, and then
Fight or flight.
fight or flight. Well, what was happening? What was really happening was my
Mhm.
legs were shaking from the adrenaline, right? And
Mhm.
even if I didn't get into a physical fight altercation with
Mhm.
somebody, the next day, that adrenaline in me, I felt it. I was sore, it's because I was so polar, I was so hyper emotional about something,
Mhm.
that I created the joint pain. And so that's what we teach people here through the biofrequency neutralization is we get them in the neutral pattern. We get them in the neutral pattern for their health. We get them in their neutral pattern for their creation process, because when we want to create something or desire to create something, we do not want to create this big polar thing that we're going to have to experience the opposite. And in my life, coming from what I used to do is, as a motivational speaker, and I used to teach people how to be CEOs of companies, the proper mindset for marketing, selling, the motivational speaker that was on an airplane going from business to business, going rah, 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 making millions. And then, yeah, that was my dream. That's what I thought was success. It was polar, and I created that through frequency, through manifestation. But yet I created it not out of neutrality. So what did I have to experience? I had to experience the pendulum swing to the other side and become the opposite of what I was, unmotivated, nothing, having nothing. No, nobody could motivate me. And so once I realized what happened to me, that's when I realized, okay, this next creation that I'm going to create for my life, I'm going to create out of neutrality. I'm not going to be polar about it, so that my highs and my lows, they look the same. And that's a big part of the biofrequency neutralization process.
Oh, that's amazing. So what the first step do you think can our audience take today to begin rewriting their mindset and reclaim the inner power? What do you think?
Well, the first step is to take a look at your outer world, okay, and find exactly what gives you hyper emotion. What are you against? What are you preaching against? What are you so against? Because, like, in America, in especially here, what I'm seeing nowadays is in California, where we live, is people are taking to the streets out here,
Extreme.
and they are so against something that when you are against anything, the frequency of being in resistance will bring that even more to you. So the more people are against something, the bigger it blows up and enters into your field of reality. Now it's just overtaken you. And same thing, the more you love something, the more you bring it into it overtakes. So, like Mother Teresa said, don't ever invite me to an anti-war protest, because I don't want to create more war. I want to invite me to a pro-peace rally, because I'm for peace, and I would definitely march for peace. But I will not march against war, because I know that when I march against something, it will come to me in a bigger faction of reality. It's what you resist persists. And so the first step is just take a look at your surroundings, make a list of everything that you're polar about, bring it into a neutral perspective, right? We don't need to talk about how much we hate something. We don't need to talk about how much we love something. We are. The ego wants to give identification to everything. And when we silence the ego, our neutral frequency and our subjective mind comes out, and actually we can start hearing our subjective mind, and the ego mind quiets itself, telling you that you need to do this, you need to be this, you need to be against this, for this, that. And then we're neutral. When we create from that neutral pattern, we create a more responsive, more stable environment for our body, for our mind, and for the people around us.
So true. So true. Thank you so much. That was great. I'm so excited to learn more about you guys and what you do. So how can our participants of the summit can reach out to you? Can you give us some information about yourself? How can
Yes, we'll put in links, or if we're able to do that, kendracannoy.com is where people go for the Accelerated Regeneration Method. And then
I am on Facebook. I have a group called Fine Tune Your Frequency. And you can find that on Facebook and join the group. And there's plenty of information on how to create, how to manifest, how to be your most optimal self in the neutral frequencies.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. And I think you guys have some free giveaways. So we're going to attach you to this video and our email and promotional email that's going to go before August 2nd.
Absolutely.
All right. It was great to meet you. And thank you so
pleasure
much
meeting
for
you.
sharing wonderful work you do in people's lives. It's just amazing. Well, I wish you the best and keep in touch with you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Okay. Thank you so much. Have a great
Take care.
weekend. Bye-bye.